Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Industry and Esports Insider podcast, where I speak to people and personalities about the esports sector. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Counter-Strike and events, specifically in the UK as well. So for this, I brought Andrew Haworth, the VP of Ecosystem, specifically for Valve and Riot titles, at Blast, which is a major tournament operator. We're going to be talking about, well, the Blast Premier Spring Finals, the latest Counter-Strike 2 event, which is happening, well, in London, and we're also going to be talking about the Counter-Strike ecosystem in 2025, how them as a tournament organizer have had to kind of shift their schedule, change a few things, given the fact that more tournament organizers are coming into the space. We also do talk about the event space in general, how Blast decides what cities they want to host their events, and also we talk about the UK event scene in general, with a lot more esports events coming into the UK. Why is this happening, and also will it affect the overall esports ecosystem? It's a great chat, and I can't wait for you to listen to this. So let's jump into it. So Andrew, welcome to the Industry. It's great to have you on. We've never actually spoken, despite I think I've spoken to everybody else around Blast, right? So I finally got the main man, I guess.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here. Yeah, we do a lot with Esports Insider. Love what you do, but haven't had a chance to speak to you personally, although I speak to other parts of Esports Insider regularly. So great to be on board.
So why are we speaking? Well, Andrew, let's be honest, we're speaking about Counter-Strike, the events, expansion, Blast as a whole, but let's talk about the big one first. Obviously, this is being recorded before the Blast Premier Spring Finals. How are you looking forward to the event?
Well, very excited about the event. It's great to have such a big CS tournament back in the UK. I think we're going back to the Face It Major in London in 2018 since there's been a big tier 1 CS event in the UK. So that's really exciting as a UK fan of CS. It's one of the iconic global cities. So bringing major events to that is always exciting. And Wembley Arena is a great venue. So as a location, we're really excited about it. I think there's some incredible teams coming in. There's some great storylines there. You've got some of the teams that have been duking it out at finals throughout this year and seeing how they perform. And then you've got the likes of Saw that have kind of had a good fairy tale story of getting through and seeing if someone like that could start sort of mixing it with the big boys and getting through to the latter stages of something.
How have you found having kind of the build up to the event so far when it comes to being in London itself? I believe it got announced. Did it get announced at ESI London last year or close to that?
It did. No, I was on stage last year at ESI London announcing it. That was great to do, obviously, through the partnership with you and the relationship we have with Visit London. That was great to be able to do that there. It's been a really exciting journey. Obviously, there's a lot happening in the UK in esports completely at the moment. Like Worlds were announced, I think, a couple of weeks after us. So I'm glad I got in there first. Otherwise, that might have overshadowed us. But it's a really good groundswell of excitement in the UK in the esports scene. I think there's a huge amount of talent in the esports ecosystem in the UK that is sadly not always in front of the camera or certainly on the server in CS at the moment. Not that there aren't some great players, but not as a groundswell level. But there's a huge amount of people working in the industry. So to have a home event for that is brilliant for the community and for the huge numbers of fans.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about like the UK in general and also like the events process and everything. I guess like one thing that I did want to mention straight away though was obviously, alongside the Blast Premier Spring Finals, there is ESI London on June 13th. I have to mention this quick. And obviously we'll be having a focus on Counter-Strike because it makes sense relating with Blast Premier Spring Finals, right? Does it kind of just show that there is like an appetite for Counter-Strike in the UK?
I think it does. I think the announcement was received very well last year. The ticket sales are strong. We will hope to be building out a longer term relationship with CS in the UK. So I think it does. I think also what you have to always remember is the UK is a great destination. So it is a city that, certainly London is a city that people want to come to. It is, so on a map for CS fans as a destination, it works very well in the same way, Paris did for the major last year. And so if we can build London to be a destination in the same way that Cologne is, and that obviously doesn't happen overnight, but if that can be, that's a great city that's got good commercial interest, that's got a good fan base, everybody knows it's always going to be a great show. You get a UK economy growing from it and a UK fan base really happy, and you get it as a group of mates that go, great, I'm going to go to a CS show next year. Oh, let's do London, because that's a really fun, wider entertainment product for them.
Is that why we're seeing a lot more events, like really quite recently actually, come to the UK? There seems to be this, like, just this out of nowhere push, right? Especially from last year to this year, we're seeing so many more events be UK focused.
I think there's a number of factors at play. Like, some of it is probably still like some pent up post-pandemic demand of, when we say like there hasn't been a CS event since 2018, probably 3 of those years you weren't able to put something on. So there's an ability, or at least the esports world, because we could operate online or in studios still, was probably slightly behind the curve of traditional entertainment events getting back into live, because they couldn't do anything else. So I think there's a little bit of that we've probably, obviously we've got the end of that curve, but that probably means there was a few titles and developers that wanted to be in the UK, and then it was like, right, let's do that. There's definitely, certainly from our side, we have 3 events in the UK. We've just finished a really successful event for Rainbow Six in Manchester, and we've got the spring final next week. And I think 10 days later, we've got the Rocket League major in the Copper Box in London as well. So there is a sense of, we're a strong UK business that wants to be able to put on events in our home. And that's an easier lift for us as a UK company than those 3 shows being in 3 different continents. There is a huge interest from Visit London and London and partners within London rather than the wider UK of bringing events in and understanding the value that brings, which is great. And so they can help support and open doors for businesses. And I think there is that recognition that the UK has a very wide esports fan base. That varies by title in terms of the core audience, but I actually think the UK culture is generally fans of events. Mm-hmm. Like, you see that across the entertainment space, across all areas, where if there's something good in the UK and someone's put on a good production, which I'd like to think Blast is always at the forefront of, then you as a fan will go, whether actually you're a massive CS fan or you're like, actually, I play Dota, or I play a little bit more maybe of Valorant. They'll be like, that's still going to be a great event. I will go. And so I think that has a big point of it as well. But the UK is, a global center. Like, London's one of the sort of preeminent global cities, commercially, travel-wise. So I think hosting events there makes a lot of sense, not just in London, but the wider UK as well.
Yeah, when you were talking actually about like the culture in the UK, about that appetite for live events, obviously a lot of it probably does come through like traditional sport, right? Everyone likes to go to a home game, and support their team and stuff like that. But then, like, I guess in a way, a little bit with esports in general and the kind of the allure of esports is sometimes a little bit like a music festival, right? Where it's like, I will go to download, for example, for 3 years, and sometimes it's not even to see who's there. It's actually just to experience the festival itself. It's like, is that kind of something that you want to kind of have with esports as events as well? You have obviously the hardcore fans who want to go, but it is about creating, this is what esports is kind of atmosphere.
Absolutely, and we should talk about that more, because I worked at Download for 7 or 8 years, Tom. That's my background, is running music festivals, and that is actually why you see a lot of the leadership team in Blast over time are now esports endemics, but perhaps came in with just an interest and a fascination with esports as a fan, rather than being a true endemic. You're trying to bring in the right balance of expertise. We are selling escapism. We're putting on a high quality tournament for the players and making sure that that is at the pinnacle of integrity standards, of allowing them to perform at their best. But that is a conduit to entertaining fans. And so that's the balance we want to be able to create of an experience, so that you can come as a hardcore CS fan, and we are giving you the best teams on the best stage with the best production, giving you the insights and analytics and the access to the data that you can't get elsewhere, and the access on our Blast TV platform to watch and engage in that broadcast in a different way. But I'm also putting on a really great show. So, like, I maybe arrogantly, but I would struggle to find somebody who's walked into one of our shows, and it'll definitely be the same at the spring final, that won't go, wow. That even if you are not a true CS sort of endemic fan, you will be able to look at that. That's just great entertainment. I had a great day out, and that's what you want to create. We want to make sure that the real intense fan base have every access to detail that they want and the experience that they are getting, but also that we've got to welcome open arms to everybody. It's a game we love. It's a game, you all love, but that's what we are. That's why we want to do it. We want to showcase the game and the entertainment and the community that we love to a wider audience, as well as entertaining that core base. And I think London gives us an opportunity to do that as the kind of city it is and that culture that we have. And that's really what we also like to try and achieve with our big arena finals, is making sure that the show is at an incredible level, that you've gone with a group of mates, that there's 5 of you and 3 of you are really, really CS kind of nuts. And 2 of you are like, yeah, I've played, maybe 100 hours, but I am not, like, that's not my game. But I'll go along. I want to make sure so they really enjoy it, and they can become a fan. You look at traditional sports, so there's not many people watching the Super Bowl that play American football on a week in, week out basis. And I think sometimes esports has got to a world where, or risk going down a route of, you can almost only be a fan if you were playing, 30 hours a week of something, which is not necessarily the inclusive sort of entertainment culture we want to create. So it needs to be open for everybody.
Do you think that there should be more events outside of London? Obviously, London is like a major, stronghold in the UK, but should there be more events? And was kind of the Blast R6 major in Manchester a little bit of just seeing what the waters are like, well, in the north, where I'm from, essentially?
And look, I'm from Fleetwood, just outside of Blackpool, so I'll happily put a show up there. Yes, like, there should be more events. Like we would, I would love to be putting a show on in, the Duncher show that ESL did in Birmingham was successful. Co-op Live's up and running now. There'll be, and a venue would be great in there. Glasgow's got some great venues. Like, there is, any major city has all the infrastructure and the desire and the opportunity, and that culture that we talked about in the UK, I think, is there in all of those cities as well. So there is no reason why we wouldn't want to do that. At the moment, like, I have more venues to choose from in London. So when I'm looking for availability, the Mocking League show, for example, that's at the Copper Box rather than a Wembley Arena. There's 7 or 8 kind of venues in London that I could put a show on. There's 3 or 4 in Manchester. There's 3 in Birmingham. So it's not often a lack of desire. It is almost that there's still the pent-up sort of post-pandemic demand in entertainment. I'm trying to just get venue availability. So it isn't necessarily a position of, I'm only looking at London. I'm just able to enact in London much more effectively at the moment.
And do you think then, as we kind of like put a nice bow on the events chat, and we'll jump back into Counter-Strike in particular, do you think that actually having more events in the UK will help grow the scene? Because as you kind of mentioned, whilst there is talent in the UK, there isn't as many teams, and there isn't as much as I would say a strong competitive ecosystem, maybe not just in Counter-Strike, and kind of all of esports, really, compared to the likes of Germany, Spain, and other nations like that.
Right. I'd like to think there's been lots of studies across traditional sports and others of whether you know, does hosting an event in a city lead to direct sort of talent base? It certainly usually leads to grassroots engagement and people playing the game. Does that lead to, instead of just Messi on a Vitality, a full lineup of teams that would play under the British flag? I don't know. I'm also not sure if that's what we're trying to do or what it needs to do. Like, I would love that to be the case. I'd love that to be we go anywhere we go, I can see a direct correlation. But I think it is around giving an opportunity and hopefully an aspirational sort of stage of going, if you're an up-and-coming CS player in a tier 2 lineup at the moment going, there seems to be a show in the UK every year. I would love to get onto a roster or help my roster develop to be a point where I'm playing in that. Like, that's great aspirationally. It certainly helps the wider ecosystem, the me's, the you's, the tournament officials, the broadcast team, commercial teams, all of the people working around the ecosystem. By there being more events, it only provides more opportunities, whether that is, direct employment, whether that's freelance employment, whether that is just development opportunities, and you can have relationships with the universities and college schemes that are out. There's a lot of them out there now in the esports sort of sector. You can build out sort of work experience programs and the ability to see that journey through to a career. And that is a clear, tangible benefit from, an increased volume of events in the UK.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, right? Because there is clearly a fandom of esports in the UK. It's seen, you see it all over the place a lot of times as well. But it is kind of like there does seem to be more of a fandom in esports as opposed to actually a professional competitive infrastructure. Again, not that there isn't one there, but compared to the likes of other regions that, Poland, for example, is probably another big one as well.
Yeah, and I don't know what the solve is for that. Or like, as much as I said, I would love to see that coming through as a Brit and a just general sports and esports fan. I want to see the British flag being waved and people doing well, but I don't. That's not necessarily, the direct aim of what we're trying to do. But I think it would be great if that starts to happen. But that's maybe a conversation for a wider group or a different panel next week.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure there probably will be a panel at ESI London talking about that, definitely. So good plug right there. June 12th, ESI London. I'm going to bring that one up again. So with the Counter-Strike ecosystem, that obviously a lot of excitement with 2024. Obviously, it was one of the first full seasons, I would say, with Counter-Strike 2, which is going to happen because it was obviously a little bit back and forth last year. But a lot of people are interested in 2025 as well because there's been a lot of changes. Valve basically announced that they want to basically fully open up the ecosystem. You've announced 6 tournaments that will be taking place next year. How has kind of things changed for Blast now leading up to that 2025 ecosystem? Because I can imagine there's been a lot of internal changes that you've had to make and build up to.
Yeah, we worked through, as we started understanding a direction of travel that Valve wanted to take, there is a lot of reflection of what we've achieved, what perhaps we tried to do and didn't work, and then how we could design that going forward. I think while the partnership model clearly had a lot of detractors in some parts of the community, and obviously Valve have taken it, moved that away from how we operate, I think it also did create sustainable businesses that were able to sort of build out and invest in each other's success, and as in us in the teams and the teams by attending in us, and for ESL, that undeniably kind of did limit competitivity, and which is what Valve are trying to reflect. But it did also build out a sort of a professionalization to some extent, and actually allowed probably the scene to survive some of the pandemic challenges because there was a cohort of people working together. That being said, 25 is incredibly exciting. I am really excited and proud of what we've built out as our proposition for 25, which will be, launching next week at the Spring Final, or later this week by the time this goes out. We've worked incredibly hard on it, and I actually don't think the challenges are any different than currently, other than they put a different lens on them and a slightly greater focus. So we are still trying to build the most compelling storylines to entertain fans and build formats. We've probably got better levers to do that because of a ranking-based invite rather than a membership structure. That brings its challenges, as if I don't know which teams I'm working with to promote or build a storyline around a tournament. But then that means there's, almost to our point on UK development, there's a greater route into that of people being able to plot a course and see how they grow. We are the same challenges. How do I build the most compelling product for a fan? How do I build something that teams get excited about playing and winning is very important. You'll see next week we have tried to be quite innovative in our structures and formats. I don't think the world needs everybody producing tournaments that look and feel the same. And format-wise, esports fans can talk about formats forever. But I don't think the answer is trying to find the perfect format and repeating it. Not everything is the Champions League final. If every event claims to be that, then none of them are. Yeah. So there needs to be different storylines and narratives across a season. And that's what we try to create. The challenges, I think, will be, it's great to see a number of TOs come back into the ecosystem, mainly because that shows that the ecosystem people think is valuable. If nobody else had come in on this change, I'd have actually been more concerned of maybe they are able to know something that we don't. So it's great that there's a groundswell of interest. It's great that people want to put on more tournaments, which I'm hoping by the nature of that will mean more tournaments in different places around the world, providing different opportunities for fans and different opportunities for regional teams. If it then transpires that doesn't work out and everybody's put tournaments in the same place, there'll need to be a bit of calibration. But I think the challenges that we're facing are still the same of how do we make a compelling storyline for a fan? How do we put on the best production to keep a fan engaged and effectively tell that storyline? How do we provide the best base for a player and a team to show off their skills and to give them the best chance of success? And how do we make our events compelling for teams to attend? That is a challenge into next year. I hear a lot about the potential risk of a grind or a structure on that. I think as the ranking system evolves with Valve and the structure of the tournaments evolve, I'm less worried about that because I think that will end up being retrospective to the scales that you are in the kind of tier structure. So if you are a top 40, 50 team, you might be playing lots of events, but your actual aim is maybe to get to 32 to get invited to that next tournament. It's the same when you see I look at perhaps the analogy of how that works in tennis or golf, where there's cutoffs to majors where you're invited. That doesn't mean that people are playing like constant tournaments. It means they're trying to play the right tournaments to manage their structure, to get into that invite, and then you try and take your opportunity at the next level up. And if you don't, you drop back down to tennis uses like a 250 tournament versus a 500. So I think that's how it will probably transpire, in that I don't see a top 10 team playing
200 tournaments.
They're not playing 35 weeks a year. Like, I just don't see that. Maybe they try to do it, and that will then tail off at the end of seasons. But I don't think so. So I think we want to try and get the storylines right to make that exciting for fans to watch throughout the season and to make it competitive for teams to attend.
Yeah, and was this kind of something that you expected, was having all of these tournament organizers? Because to be fair, I didn't expect it to be immediately in 2025 that everyone decided to kind of jump on and start, launching tournament circuits. And does it kind of really emphasize, to add on to that, actually, that you really have to have now like a strong brand as a tournament organizer to kind of, get these teams involved?
So the first part of that, I did, or at least we had to build ourselves a model that assumed we had more competitors coming in and working out. Which, as I said, I think is good. Like, I still think we are at the stage of an ecosystem growing where we're not fighting over a slice of the pie, we're making a bigger pie. And so we should be collaborating where possible and having conversations. Now, there will always be a point of conflict in that because we're not able to completely align, but let's have those conversations and try and work together where possible for the betterment of the ecosystem. And we outreach to TOs and with varying degrees of success are able to achieve that. So the second point of your question.
The second question was more about like kind of now that there is more essential competition, do you have to kind of have an established and well-built brand? And obviously marketing has to probably be a lot, not a lot better, but there's a lot more importance on a marketing department now because of that.
I think there's a lot of important priorities and challenges in all departments. I don't think it's just a marketing side because that's, if we sell it well, but people turn up and it's crap, then that is less appealing to anybody. Or, we sell it well, they all turn up, they think it looks amazing on a stage, but the match doesn't start on time. Like that doesn't, all the players complain about integrity issues. Those are things that you still have to get a base level right to allow the exciting part to shine above that. I think it's an advantage having a brand in there with that. But I equally think there's a great opportunity that there will be people coming in with strong brands that will build out. We're very happy with what we built out and really excited about launching that to the community later this week. We know, I think the Brass Premier brand is very strong. That's known now. Might be associated at times with partner leagues, but it's known. We put on great events. Everybody that goes to those events thinks they're good. They have a great time. The experience of watching our shows online is great. We'd never really have any competitive integrity issues. The player base and the teams like playing our events. That is something that's core and fundamental of what we want to do. We will want to be making sure that the teams and the players' needs are met. That allows us to then focus on the kind of fan-first entertainment side of it.
As a final couple questions then as we wrap up, I do want to talk about another expansion that's kind of happened. Not just UK esports expanding, I want to talk about Blast expanding. Obviously, you've gone into too many titles for me to mention right now, obviously Fortnite, Rocket League, Rainbow Six. But I think the big one that was recent is Dota 2, right? And another Valve title. So as that ecosystem's opened up, you've kind of also stepped into that kind of door as well. So how did that kind of come about? And was that always the ambition to go into Dota 2?
Yes, in a line, it was always a game we loved. We saw opportunities in. We would have liked to do something in. We dabbled in a little online tournament during the early COVID years. And obviously then Dota evolved in a way with the DPC that did perhaps give us a route in. And I guess whereas, almost maybe to slightly answer your question before, we are probably a new entry coming in to Dota as opposed to other people doing that to us in Counter-Strike. I think that's where our brand is really beneficial. So when we launched that, there was a lot of feedback of like, wow, great. We like what Blast do. We know the production level. We know the way they try and innovate. We're quite excited about seeing what they do in Dota. We're really excited about it. And I think that gives us a great entry point that people know who we are, know the quality stamp, and know the expectation. That also really nicely puts a lot of pressure back on us and making sure we deliver on that. And so, yeah, you will see, as you'd expect, us doing things a little bit differently in Dota. We're very close to being able to announce more details on that. And we're really excited as to what that might become and how that can grow. It's definitely a long-term play. Like, this is something that we're looking to build into in the way we have a Counter-Strike offering from the Pro Series days into Premier through to what we'll be announcing next week. We want to see Dota evolve in that and build out, new destinations, new tournaments, new structures, and deliver that kind of fan-first entertainment in the best way that we can.
And obviously, all of these new tournaments and some of the old tournaments as well need host cities, right? So you've recently opened up your application for processes for 2025 and 2026, I believe. Yeah. What then is like not of a pitch in a way, but like kind of what is actually needed to kind of host a Blast event? And what city are you kind of looking for?
From a city perspective?
Yes, from a city perspective, yeah.
And essentially a willingness to go on the esports journey with us, of like, as we said, like, you've seen the value of like a groundswell of events in the UK at London. We've seen, a Cologne kind of example of putting a city slightly globally on a map for a demographic and a community. And that's what we want to try and bring to a city. It's a really engaged, passionate audience that we bring to a city. What we need is really the venues. Like, that's what we are looking at. There's obviously, into different territories in the world, issues of access and visas and work rights, which is why we always try and have a partnership with local bodies so that we can understand the mechanisms and make that as easy as possible. Or it goes back to the point of making it easy for teams and talent to just focus on performance. So we will try and take all that pain away and operate that for them. There's only so much outreach we can do of us knowing the cities that we have existing relationships with. It's a very big world out there. And as you say, across then now 5 or 6 different titles and hopefully more, we've actually got a groundswell of offerings. Whereas 2-3 years ago, we were talking about just Counter-Strike and I had 3 shows to place somewhere. We are now across the business are talking 15, 20. And that means there's opportunities to build longer term relationships where I could actually rotate a title through a city, so you're building like an esports proposition, or you might be building a title specific proposition for a location. So it's really a kind of a receptiveness of the city to the wider esports proposition, which we're seeing a lot. And as you mentioned earlier, a lot of places are starting to really understand and see the value of that and what they can build and grow over the time.
Are there any regions in particular that like strike out? Maybe not like a specific country, but like would an SEA event appeal, or just depend on whether the interest is there for what title there is?
Yes, it does. As in, like, there's obviously hit spots for each title that we'd go, I'd love to do something there because that's where a clear audience is. But that also doesn't mean that you aren't doing events in those smaller territories, because that's what we want to be growing as the fan base and the experience. So I think when you've now got the variety of events, the number of events that we're talking about, and again, we'll talk some more certainly on a Counter-Strike specific angle when we launch that later this week, you've got an ability to be looking at events that start from a 1,500 kind of capacity and to a 10,000 plus capacity. Like, there's different cities that would work for each of those, and that may move across the titles. You look at where we've operated, we've got a great foundation across all of Europe. We've done a number of events in Brazil, a number of events in North America. I would expect those regions to still be on our portfolio regularly across all titles. You mentioned SEA, Asia as a whole. That is a gap in the Blast kind of resume at the moment. There's a lot of titles that we operate in now that have got incredibly strong Asian presences, or we're just announced that we're operating in. So I would expect to see us working into that part of the world in the short to medium term, and then it will grow from there.
Yeah, Andrew, absolute pleasure speaking to you. I think we could talk more in depth about Dota 2 in itself. I think I said that's the second podcast. We'll get that one done later on. But yeah, absolute pleasure having you on. Do you have any final words to say?
I think the Counter-Strike landscape for 25 is really exciting. If you're a fan out there, you should be really excited about it. The tournaments and the storylines that we're going to be bringing you, I think, should give you a bit of everything that you want, and challenge some ideas in some places. I think it's a really then evidence of the strength of the scene, that there's a number of TOs coming into there. And hopefully that's replicated in Dota, where we feel really excited and passionate about coming in to be able to launch something compelling.
And that's it for today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed the chat with Andrew. It was really interesting getting his insight into the Counter-Strike ecosystem in 2025, but then also Blast's kind of ideas when it comes to hosting events and where they potentially want to host in the future. If you do like this kind of conversation and industry's chat, specifically with the esports sector, then do check out our previous episodes. Also, if you want to know about the latest business news in esports, check out esportsinsider.com. But until then, though, I'll see you next time.